You can start just about any time now, whenever you're ready.
Welcome to the ASD Water Dowsers Mastermind Conference Call. These talks are scheduled for the third Monday of each month, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and last for about an hour. Today is the 15th of April, 2019. I'm G from NorCal Dowsers in Redding, California. Jeanette and I will be joining your host, Sherry Hope, for tonight's program featuring Ed Stillman, and which will be recorded and accessible at ASD's website under the Members Only section. This call is open to anyone interested in learning from experienced water dowsers. Please hold your questions until Sharon calls for them at the end of Ed's talk. Thanks.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Water Dowsers conference call. Glad to have all of you on. And tonight we have a special treat with Ed Stillman being on. And I actually first met Ed probably like 25 years ago or so. And actually I had a talk that I was going to be giving, and he helped me get set up for it. So I appreciate that, Ed. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay, happy to do that for you all the way those years back.
Yeah. So the picture that you see in the announcement from ASD, that was taken at the West Coast Conference in Santa Cruz back in the year 2000. And Ed looks pretty much the same now.
Well,
I
that's
guess,
very nice to know.
Dowsing keeps you young. That's
right. It does. It really does.
It does. Yeah, I agree with that. So just a little bit about Ed before he starts. Ed was or has been a professional water well dowser. He's just recently retired from field dowsing, and he's done numerous wells in the northern Arizona area. Ed actually worked together with Jack Baxter for 23 years, and I know he could tell you lots of stories about that. Mm-hmm. Ed and Jack have done some of the most advanced water well dowsing ever done in Arizona, and probably just about anywhere. Ed he's a lifetime member of ASD, and he's been a teacher, an instructor, and a co-director of the ASD West Coast Conference and the Southwest Dowsing Conferences, including basic dowsing schools for about 19 years. Ed served as the ASD's National Scientific Advisor. And while doing that, he was actually in charge of the Dowsers Brainwave Study. And he's written 2 articles in the ASD Journal about the Brainwave Study, and that is really fascinating. He's published, so he's had those articles published in the ASD Quarterly. He's presented a keynote address on the subject at the West Coast Conference and the Ozark Research Institute, for those of you who are familiar with that. So, like I said, is now retired from map and field dowsing for water wells, and he's actually my co-host here on the Water Dowsers Mastermind Conference Call group. And we're very happy and honored to have him in our group. So right now, I'm just going to turn this over to you, Ed, and thank you for coming on. Looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Shari. The title of my talk tonight is Dowsing for Potable and Palatable Water Aquifers with Contaminated Aquifers at Different Depths in the Same Borehole. And that's quite a subject that we're talking about tonight, but it's going to be a good one. and it is a commercial well situation with a lot of things going on to make it happen. And so I'm going to be discussing that in good detail for you. So before I completed my 35-year career as an electrical engineer, I'd been attending the West Coast Conference already, and I was pleased with what I was learning. And when I retired, my wife and I moved to Sedona, and I had a lot of good things going on there. I hired the hydrologist at Northern Arizona University to teach me about water well locations and all about water dowsing, and he taught me quite a bit about dowsing, actually. And then I met Jack Baxter in Sedona and found out he was a lifetime ASC member like I was, and he was the past president of the ASD Savoy Harvorlick chapter in Virginia before he moved to Sedona, and his wife moved with him, of course, to retire. So we became good friends and taught each other what we knew. Now, what happened at that point is that it was time for us to start our dowsing business, and we called it Dowsing Services, and the next line was water well location specialists and more. So today I'm going to tell you about a funded commercial water well situation, and Jack and I were dowsing for potable water aquifers with contaminated aquifers at different depths in the same borehole in the town of Buckeye, Arizona. Buckeye is located about 30 miles due west from Phoenix, Arizona, and has summer temperatures just like Phoenix from about 105 degrees to 120. So we were in for a hot time in the summer to find water wells. I got to tell you that. Okay, here's how this all works out. How we got hired to locate the water wells for the town of Buckeye, and Anderson and Kalish Real Estate Services were going to build 2,500 new low-cost homes in Buckeye using a total of 5 separate home site areas, that is land, with approximately 500 homes on each home site area, which means that there would be 2,500 homes that they would be building. Just to make you drool a little bit, the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-story house was to be 1,259 square feet and sell for $179,900. Isn't that a nice number? And 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths were going to be 2,436 square feet, and they would be $230,900. And all this was to be completed in 2005. The selection of dowsers had not been done yet, but they would be expected to locate 10 or 15 well sites, possibly even more. So Joe Kalish, we ended up just learning from him that we were going to locate the depth of the individual aquifers in the borehole and douse primary maximum contaminant level MCLs, which were enforceable, and secondary MCLs based on cosmetic and aesthetic qualities, non-enforceable. So we then would have to also find the gallons per minute. And that was part of the things that we had to do. And we were chosen, Jack and I both, so we were hired by Joe Kalish. Joe also would hire the hydrology company consisting of 3 hydrologists. And the hydrologist group will use the Dowsers well data, which would be ours, and also hire the drilling company to work with the hydrologist professionally to drill the wells. So what happens next is the hydrologist will have water samples tested by the lab for each of the aquifers located in each borehole to determine the max contamination levels. Jack and I also learned from Joe Kalish that there was a real kind of a hooker in this situation, in that the Valencia Water Company in Buckeye, this is the company that handled all the water in the town of Buckeye, and they were in charge of all the wells and the waters, and you bought your water from them for your home and so forth. We also learned that Anderson and Kalish Real Estate Services was paying for each new well that the dowsers located, but that A&K would be stuck with any new wells that did not comply with Valencia Water Company requirements, and all of the maximum contamination levels had to be inbounds. If any of these max contamination levels were out of bounds, the aquifer was considered useless to Valencia Water Company. However, if any aquifers were totally inbounds, then Valencia would buy the well from Anderson and Kalish. Kind of a really tough situation. This was confirmed by the lab testing of all the water in each aquifer. So Jack and I, to get started on this, drove to Buckeye, and we had 2 of the parcels to inspect, and we selected, because we wanted to start with 2 of them and see what we were up against. We selected Rancho Vista parcel near the regional water storage tank, which had a capability of 100,000 gallons of water storage. So it was a huge, huge tank. We mapped dowsed there, and there was an excellent well site there. The second location was the Sonoran Vista parcel. Again, this had 500 home sites on it that would be built. And we had mapped dowsed 4 separate well site locations, 1 on each of the north and west sides, and 2 on the east side of Sonoran Vista. And that is the amount of that one right there. Let's continue on. However, we got a real large shock when we got there. Sonoran Vista was a square parcel, 1/2 mile by 1/2 mile, with a large farmhouse and completely covered by cotton plants as big as trees, waist high to neck high, so far as we could see, all the way to the horizon. We had to field douse by working our way along the paths, an alternate path, and the trees were watered every day by the farmer, so there was mud to slosh around in daily. We now realize that for each of the 3 well sites we had mapped out, and there were 4 total, that Joe wanted on Sonoran Vista, Jack and I had to use our cell phone to call the surveyors to come to our location in the trees, and to stand and wait until in the heat until they got to our location, and ensure that they marked our drilling location and created a precise GPS location for the well site itself. The farmer told us that he would not permit any kind of a permanent pole, even tall pole, to be placed on our well location. So a ground marker and a global positioning satellite were required with about hopefully 1 foot variation of where we knew the well site was to be. We proceeded to Rancho Vista and found the regional water storage facility there had been completed with this 100,000 gallon water storage capacity that I mentioned. And so at that point, there was another well site there, and we chose that one to get started, which turned out to be, unfortunately, a really giant mistake getting this program off the ground for us. What happened is, I hate to look back on this, it was not fun at the moment. Without telling the hydrologist or Jack and I, the very first well we had dowsed in Buckeye was a complete failure. The drilling company had drilled about 600 feet into the bedrock and hit severely contaminated salt water with very high hydrostatic pressure. The hot salt water came up into the well, and we never knew if we had potable water above the bedrock, which is where we were expecting it, or not. The well had to be formally abandoned by filling in the borehole to Arizona Department of Water Resources specifications. We did learn that very quickly with our own work that all the successful potable water aquifers had been found more shallow than the bedrock in the borehole. So that was something very important. So in our meeting, Joe Kalish had gotten an office for us to all get together so we could all talk things over. The hydrologist apologized to us for not stopping the drilling company from drilling into the bedrock, because it was their responsibility. But since then, all the drilling has gone very well, and the hydrologist did a great job from that time on. So all of that worked out very, very well. Okay, so the next thing that happened is I want to now have you take a good look with me at map dowsing, field dowsing, and information dowsing that we used for this job. Jack and I had laid out the path of the potable aquifers for the north part of oh, here it is. Lost it here for a second, of the Sonoran Vista. And so once we had that, we were able then to start completely doing our dowsing of the location of where the well should be for the first one we were going to do on Sonoran Vista. And that worked out very, very well, because Jack and I used the same map and separately map dowsed exactly where that should be. And when we took the 2 pages and laid them on top of each other, they were identical, completely identical. We were really very, very much the same. And so we had our location to get the drilling underway on that one. So we had essentially dowsed the full half mile from essentially north all the way to the south, and only had to do about 100 yards to select the north well site. So that was a very important thing to get going on, and we were, you know, we really had to start moving on these jobs, because we were going to do, as we knew, 10 or 15 well sites by the time we were done with all this. One of the things that we really wanted to do for Joe Kalish on this one, since he had trusted us, is we used the energizing and purifying water workup by Raymond Grace. And so what we were doing after we got going on getting the water, getting the well drilled, is to determine if the spirit of the water was in the potable aquifer that we wanted to have the work done. And determine if any of the following were in the water: negative entities, demonic forces, negative thought forms, spirits, such as the spirit of greed, anger, fear, and others. And also then determine if we were ready to invite the spirit of the water, which we were. And we knew that we were going to do something positive by doing that, something additionally positive to what we were actually talking about. Okay, the next problem we have is how to get everything done for the precise location. And we were requesting that the survey company accurately survey our well site markers as soon as possible after we called them on our cell phone, and have them come out. And we would just stand there in the heat. That's about all we could do. And we were welcoming the fall season when that crazy place out there finally cooled down. The farmers don't permit any rebar in their fields, and they made this point abundantly clear to us in no uncertain terms. So we stood and wait until they arrived, and then they put in their very, very powerful GPS, and they could get our location down to 1 foot. We did have a marker on the ground. It wasn't just a pole. So that worked out that we could leave those there. And with the situation with our locations need to be surveyed, we got them to the 1 foot accuracy without any problems. when the drilling company was ready to begin, we asked the survey company to come out again at the time the drilling company was there. And the exact location for the drilling company to set up on was configured by not only us, but the company, the survey company as well. And with their GPS, then they were able to go directly to the actual site of where they were to drill. And of course, it's obvious any reason for the survey urgency is if our markers are moved or simply removed, the careful work we'd done would be completely negated, and then we didn't want that to happen. So that worked out quite well. So let's see, we came out of both of our locations, okay, got the proper GPS locations while we were standing there waiting for them, right? Okay, now what we're going to do next here is we're going to start into the technical part of this, the part where you're really going to learn some dowsing because it is most, it's an extremely, not, I won't say difficult, but way of having to handle this. We were handed by Joe Kalish the Environmental Protection Agency drinking water standards. And so we had to learn all the standards. For example, arsenic, starting on the 23rd of January 2006, the government had dropped it down to 10 micrograms per liter as the upper limit for arsenic. And we had also to worry about chloride in the water, not sodium chloride, but just plain chloride. And if there was more than 250 milligrams per liter in that water that we were going to be finding when we drilled, that water would taste salty at greater than 250 milligrams per liter. Fluoride was the next thing. It was permitted up to 4 milligrams per liter, and preferred baseline, secondary baseline was 2 milligrams per liter. And of course, toothpaste, if it was in high quantities in the water, would mottle the people's teeth. So we didn't want to get into that. So we had to worry that also. Another one we had to learn about was nitrate. That's NO3, and it's fertilizer. And it's limited to 10 milligrams per liter. And also the most important one, total dissolved solids, which are limited to 500 milligrams per liter. And the part of this is that Valencia Water Company wanted 150 gallons per minute or higher, and with potable and palatable water to purchase the well from Joe Kalish and Company. So those were the things that had to happen. So I want to now just be sure everybody out there knows what the definition of total dissolved solids is. If this is new to you, fine. If you already know, I'll just give you this. So it's a measure of inorganic and organic materials dissolved in water and expressed as milligrams per liter of water. The TDS measurement combines most dissolved minerals found in water sources in one value. This includes sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, sulfate, and carbonates. And finally, a water softener or reverse osmosis unit can be used to lower the TDS values. So I have in front of me now the actual drilling report of this well, and I also have the information dowsing that Jack and I did ahead of time. That is, we field dowsed where not only where we were going to put the well, but we were also going down all the way down to, it turned out to be 900 feet depth. And we had, at that time, the ability to find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate aquifers, one below the other, the first one starting at 100 feet. And all of those had to have no maximum contamination levels beyond these numbers that we had discussed here a little bit earlier tonight. So in other words, it had to be proper and pure. And then, as we've talked about, Valencia Water Company would buy that well directly from Joe Kalish and his company. So here's some examples. This is the first aquifer, and it is at 100 feet down. So the total dissolved solids, instead of being limited at 500 feet, were total dissolved solids, instead of being limited to 500 milligrams, was at 3,700 milligrams. And that takes that one out right away. In other words, if that was the only one, Valencia would not buy the well. So you can chalk that one out immediately. The NO3 was 29, and that had a limit of 10 also. So to give you some idea of our dowsing work, for the nitrate, I dowsed it at 35, Jack dowsed it at 27, and the lab results of that was 29. So we were pretty close on those things. That was the first one. And the second one was down at 197 feet. The TDS was 1,000. That automatically cooked that one because it was greater than 500. The third one, the TDS was 1,400. That automatically cooked that one because it was more than 500 milligrams per liter also. Now, we get to the good part. The next one down we had doused was the mother lode. And I had doused that there was 470 gallons per minute available in that aquifer, and Jack had doused 450 gallons per minute for his numerical values. And we also did NO3 at 2.8 and NO3 at 1.9. Now, 500 gallons per minute is what we were after, and that is what they got when they actually drilled the well completely. The TDS were 624. And so there was a problem there in that it was above the 500 milligrams, and yet there was 500 gallons waiting for Valencia Water to just pluck and take. So what Joe Kalish did was rather brilliant. He got to the president of Valencia, and he offered to put a reverse osmosis system in all 2,500 homes, all 2,500. And Valencia Water accepted that in lieu of the TDS being at 624. A very, very intelligent thing for Joe Kalish to have done. And so we then were able to sell that one to Valencia, and it was a done deal. The last two TDS were all the way at 3,800. And we had doused it, I doused it at 3,700, and Jack doused it at 3,800 before we knew what the real value was from the lab. The final one, just for fun, was TDS were 8,060, 8060. And I had doused it at 9,000, and Jack had doused it at 8,500. And so that actually was really a pretty good situation. So let's see. We want to also do a little bit more on. Okay, we've given you the fact that we were doing our field dowsing and our information dowsing. Okay. So at that point then, I'm looking for my papers here. One moment, please. Okay. So at this point, we knew we had 4 wells in Sonoran Vista. We had a west, we had 2 on the east side, and the one we had already done, which was our one on the north, which was very, very interesting because the one on the, again, we had done all the dowsing and chose where to put the well site. The east one came in at 400 gallons a minute, and the TDS was a marvelous 268, and that was excellent. That was really excellent for this whole thing. So that one sold. Bang, it was bought. The other one was Sonoran Vista West, and this one had a whole range of potable water. It was amazing. It started at 400 feet down and went all the way down to 660 feet. And it had a measured gallons per minute of 600. And again, that one sold perfectly. The fourth one was one that that Joe Kalish and his crew wanted themselves. And in the other corner, again in that east corner, there was a second well site, and it came in at 140 gallons a minute. And Valencia said, "Oh, well, you've done so well, we're going to buy that one too." So that was just absolutely, positively excellent. Positively excellent. So that is a pretty quick thumbnail of how we actually worked this problem. And at that point, in a very nice gesture, Joe Kalish gave us a commendation to both of us for succeeding in locating 5,450 dwelling units of potable water under the most difficult conditions in the town of Buckeye by using their dowsing methods. And dwelling units, I had to look them up myself in Google, and it is a way of measuring not just home sites, but actually water usage based on the number of people in a home. And he had the ability to come up with that number directly from all the water versus the dwelling units, and 5,450. So we were very pleased that we had done our job on that one. And well, at this time, Shari, I'm ready for questions, and if you want to go ahead, and I'll take it from there again.
Okay, well, I'm going to start it off with a question. What tools did you use in your map dowsing, and what tools did you use on site?
Oh, in my map dowsing?
Yes, and and at the field dowsing.
Okay, well, with map dowsing, I use a ruler, and that's about it.
Okay.
I just lay it on the dining room table and and have at it. It works beautifully, and that's my main approach. Is I just I view the map dowsing as a three-dimensional situation. My mind views it three-dimensionally, And that's after, you know, all the 25 years of actually doing this. And my brain developed the ability to do that. What was the other part of the question, Sherry?
Okay, well, still with the map dowsing, you said you use a ruler. Now, do you use also a pendulum?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay.
I use the pendulum, and I'm left-handed, so I try to write left-handed and use the pendulum right-handed. So I have a pendulum and a ruler, and I can put lines on the map, and I just use a pendulum. Yeah, that's all that's required.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And when you were on the site itself, how did you start out? What tools did you start out using?
We used really our Y rods and L rods. And for example, on the north end, when we were trying to find where we were going to put the first well site, I started walking south, and Jack started walking north, and we came up until we got a line of bearing with the tools that took us into the we were already in the trees, into the cotton trees that were chest high and neck high, and so we knew we would walk together facing each other but way far apart, and then both of us I would get a left turn and he would get a right turn, and we would go back into the bush, if you will, and then we would get another touch on the shoulder. My L rod would touch me on my right shoulder when it was time to stop, and it was amazing because Jack and I would start one row apart, and we would be looking at each other through the trees, and we were there. And then we would kind of wander around a little bit just to be sure we hadn't been a few paces off. Does that make sense all right?
Thank you, Ed. I got bumped off for a minute there, so I missed a little part of that, but I can hear the recording later.
Okay. Well,
Jeanette, do you have any questions about that, or do you want to clear anything up?
If you could just remind us how you get into your position of a dowsing state before you do the map, and how, what was it, a quick indication that yes, you needed this job and they needed you and it was a perfect fit?
Okay. It was something that we had to really think about because we had never done anything like this. And we were, of course, both living in Sedona, and it was a 3-hour drive. So we would start at 4 in the morning, get there at 7 in the morning, and at 7 in the morning it was already too hot to be doing anything with the temperatures in Buckeye. And then we would want to be out of there by 11 o'clock. That's all we could stand. And then we would go over to Joe Kalish's office and then sit down and talk with him and, give him the latest. And the other thing he could do is when we were back home, I had a fax machine, and so he could send me a fax and give me the information that he wanted from us, and we could answer him with a fax back. To ask the rest of your question.
And then how did you put yourself in a dowsing state?
Oh, okay. I put myself in a dowsing state by a number of items here, and I'm going to look. Give me just a second to find my sheet of paper. I buried it. I buried it. Where has it gone? Well, I know it's here. I got the definition of total dissolved solids, but that isn't good enough. Hang on. I'm working it. Well, okay, I'll wing it. there's a lot of things that I do to get ready. And one of them is actually prayer. Another one is oh, I wish I could find that sheet. I don't know. It's got to be here. Give me another sec. Has to be here. Okay. Okay. So I activate my inner self, and this is done by one superconscious and one subconscious mind are the two sides. Our subconscious, superconscious, and subconscious minds are two sides of the same coin, and I ask that they work together when I dowse. The superconscious supplies the answers to the questions, and the subconscious moves the involuntary muscles to operate the dowsing instruments. I call this combination my inner self, and I always address my inner self with my dowsing questions and requests. And to my inner self, I want my dowsing free of impacts of thoughts and thought forms from other people who lived on that land, and particularly the farmers who were working that land, or looking for water on that land. Tributes, I use the spirits of the land and water, gratitude and thanks for potable, palatable water, approval from the land spirits, and I invite the spirit of the water into the aquifer. And that was what I was using Raymond Grace's material for. When I do the permission part of this, it's I use the permission. I use may I, should I, can I. Do I have appropriate permission for the proper authority to do this water dowsing job? Well, the answer, when Jack and I decided, well, hey, we would go bid for this job. You know, we had no proof that we were going to win this job down there. But we were going to have to put in paperwork, and we did all of that. And the way we put in the paperwork that makes a much better publication for the person who might hire us. That part is to do some of the work. So what Jack and I had done is we had done the whole north end of Sonoran Vista, and we knew exactly where that well site was going to be. We knew how deep it was going to go. We knew that there were 6 aquifers in there, and we knew that there was something around 400 to 500 gallons a minute available. So we knew all that, and we put that in the letter to to the guy and said, okay, this is where we are. So that won it for us. That worked. So I always do that sort of thing. So that was may I. Should I? I want my permission from the highest source. Could be the cosmos, the universe, God Almighty, or your own personal choice. And can I? Do I have the knowledge and skill to do this job, and am I ready? Am I properly hydrated to douse? And oh, did we have to get hydrated a lot down there. It was just soaking wet with sweat down there. Does my inner self understand all the words, phrases, sentences, and complete context of my question or questions? And I recommend you write out your questions. I use may I, should I, can I, for the reason that I have been comfortable with may I, should I, can I, from the very first I ever started dowsing, 25 years ago. And with it and using it, it has worked for me very well for all of those years. And so I've just, it's an automatic thing to stay with it. So any other questions out there?
Jeanette, did you have another one?
Not at this time. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay. Ed, I'd like to know a little more information on the spirit of the water. What does that mean to you?
Oh, okay. This is, let me buzz through my material here. one more quick second. Okay.
You said that was Raymond Grace's material?
Yeah, Raymond Grace wrote this material in 2003, and I've used it ever since. It's wonderful stuff. It's actually I use it with his approval because it is copyrighted, and it seems that everything he has on this page on the spirit of the water is a wonderful piece of knowledge that he has provided here. So he determines if the spirit of the water is in the body or container of water, or in our case, is in the potable water chosen as our project. Yes, water has a spirit. If not, then we must make water suitable to receive the spirit of the water. And all the negatives, I read some of them, negative entities, demonic forces, and all those things. Determine if there's any curses on the body of water or the land. Then, if it's appropriate, you invite in the spirit of the water. And in doing that, then if everything is literally clean in the way of preparing for the spirit of the water to be there, it will be there. And then you ask to raise the energy of the water to the highest appropriate level to accomplish the desired purpose you have in mind. Well, that's exactly what we did. And we used exactly this because it was the most important thing with all of the problems of the materials that were not coming forth. They were much higher than the MCLs. Well, that's a problem. And if you've got a bunch of junk down there, you really want to get rid of it. Or go ahead and just ignore that particular aquifer and find out if it's how much water that it is capable of. And of course, when we got the 500 gallons a minute, that was way more than any of the other aquifers in that same borehole. So that's how that works out also.
Okay. Now, when you had contaminated water or unusable water, this was it all in one location?
No, it was, let me grab the map of that and I can give it a better answer for you.
Okay.
Okay, we had in this one borehole, we had 6 aquifers. 5 of the aquifers were completely beyond any use. And there was one in there, as you know, the TDS was 624, but Joe Kalish did his marvelous thing. And there was one high gallonage in there, which was 500 gallons a minute. And the rest of these are worthless when you look at the types of things in the primary maximum contamination levels and the secondary levels and all the things that we take, we work with in that kind of a job, in that kind of a commercial job. You have to do all those things. It's not like doing a single family residence, although you could. You know, we often in a single family residence take some water to the lab and say, hey, let's find out what we've got in here. You know, does it have nitrate in it, or does it have total dissolved solids that are at 600? You know, you don't want that in there because that water is hard as a brick at beyond 500, and it isn't fun to drink, actually. It's another thing of hardness can also be calcium and magnesium. Greater than 200 is hard water. And that's no fun. You can't do much with it. You know, you don't want to take a shower in that stuff either. You know, the soap won't lather.
Okay, so am I right in saying they had to drill through at least one aquifer that was not well good
Yes.
enough for their use? So
Yes,
what did they do? Did they cement it and drill through it, or what did they do?
Okay, so what they did after they this group drilled 600 feet down into the bedrock is the hydrologists found out that in Canada this company had built this for the very first time, a magnificent machine that would drill the well. And Joe Kalish went along with it. We jumped up and down with it when we found out that what little we could find out about it. And they drove that machine down from Canada all the way down to Buckeye. And that machine was fantastic. I still don't know how they managed to do it, but they went through the first three of the aquifers, and all of these were high TDS, high NO3s, high arsenics, and literally totally unusable. And what they did, I can tell you some more about this, is they started with a 12-inch casing from 0 to a depth of 360 feet. Okay. Inside that 12-inch casing, they put a 10-inch casing that went from ground level 0 to 580 feet. And then they understood at that point, and we understood because we had doused it, where our 500 gallons a minute was, which was right below that. Our 500 gallons a minute started at 517 feet below ground level. So the perforated zone was from 498 to 565, and that was the way they got at that 500 gallons a minute to show what they had available. And then there were two more worthless aquifers below that. And the last one was at 800 feet. So that's how we got that group down from Canada. Thank goodness that Joe was able to just put the money on that and get those guys down. And it was magnificent because we had 4 other complete land areas that had another 500 home sites on them, and so 2,500 of those, and there was just a lot of work to be done to get water for those places. And now another thing I can tell you about is Valencia Water did have other wells, but they would not support in any way, shape, or form 2,500 new homes, or as Joe wanted it, the number of the 5,450 dwelling units. I think that was considerably more than that he needed, but that's what we got out of all this. Well, that all had to be considered in how we worked the problem and where we went next, and which wells we should try to find, because there were not wells that we were starting from scratch. I've got the plats of all 5 of these locations here in front of me. And you look at this and you say, well, where do we want to put a well here? Well, you better start hunting for the aquifers around in each one of these areas. And they had put the 5 areas at different parts of the town of Buckeye. So it worked out quite well. There was a Miller Manor well, and there were several others, Blue Hills wells, and there were wells that we named each one of them just for fun, and the way Valencia wanted to name it, because they owned them, so they could change the names and do it the way they wanted anyhow. So that's our story on that. Does that make sense? Okay. I hope
Yes,
I
yes.
answered your
Thank
question.
thank you very much. Also, I'd like you to, if you have it handy, to tell which digest that you have your articles in for the Dowser's brainwave study.
Yeah, I have it handy. Just hang on a sec.
Okay. So when Ed's done with that, if we have any water dowsers who would like to ask a question, then
Yeah.
you can dial *6 to unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah. Okay. The first one is that's part 2. I need part 1. Okay. The title of it is Dowser's Brainwave Characteristics by Ed Stillman. It's volume 37, number 1, winter 1997. And let me know when you've got that down, and I'll give you the next one.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and then the next one is volume 38, number 2, spring 1998. And the title
Okay,
is
volume 38.
Number 2. Volume 38, number 2.
Okay.
Spring 1998. Dowser's Brainwave Characteristics, Part 2. Brainwave Coherence and Delta Waves.
Okay.
Now,
Great.
I have copies of these things that are, good quality. I can go 8.5 by 11 or even the smaller size. And so I have copies of the digest. Getting the digest may be pretty difficult. That's a long time back. And so I have copies. Also, what happened on the West Coast Conference when I gave the keynote address on this, somehow the Sedona Emergence monthly magazine managed to get a VHS of that. And they converted it word for word. They had a senior editor convert that whole thing of my talk to words, and they published it. And I have a copy, which is now every word that I spoke at the West Coast Conference for this. So that's got a lot of good information. And I have a DVD of when I did ORI, they made a DVD, and I had Harold up with me. And we were talking together, and I was talking about what we had found with his brainwaves, and he was talking about what his brainwaves did and how he used it in healing. And it was just a really good talk. So I have a DVD of that, and then I've got a couple of DVDs of talks I gave at the Southwest Conference to help people understand more about what we were driving at with the brainwave study. So I've got DVDs of those things too, which I was telling Jeanette about.
Okay, great. So for those of you who want to read that study but don't have the digest, you can actually go online to the member section and you can look them up, because I think all of the digests are actually on dowsers.org now.
Oh, good.
So,
they've done it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
well,
they have put everything online.
Okay. So that's one way to get your hands on the documents. And you want to do that because for the very first time ever, we talked them into putting color pictures in the American Dowser Quarterly Digest. It never had a color picture in there before. And the only way you could really see the brainwave patterns that were put into the documents on purpose was to put them in color. So it's much easier to understand what you're looking at with the color. So if you can get the originals copies, that's the way it should be. You'll enjoy it a lot more. you can understand it better too.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Okay, I'm calling for questions now. If anyone has a question, you can unmute yourself, or you can unmute yourself by dialing *6.
Am I unmuted?
Okay. Go. You certainly are. Go ahead.
Hi, Ed. This is Pat Delafield. I don't know
hi,
if you remember
Pat.
me. It's been a while. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so around Seattle, Washington, and you know, I seem to always get dowsing jobs that I have to deal with the saltwater water tables.
Okay.
Can you give me any advice? I think we've talked about this before, but I just, it doesn't sink in.
You should be able to dowse whether there is chloride, not necessarily sodium chloride, but chloride in that water that is, yeah, I had the exact number here, greater than 200, let's see, I'll find it for you right here. Got it right here. Chloride that is greater than 250 milligrams per liter in the water will taste salty without any, and not actually being salt water. But if you can train yourself by working with salt water, or just going ahead and making some up, and have your inner self understand that you wish to be able to do that again, but only standing over a well site.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So I've got the ocean really close, yeah.
And oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
So that is one way to get at it. That's the way I would get at it. And you know, that really does work. I mean, you can do things with your dowsing that you're not even sure you even know about, really. But,
yeah.
Did I answer that okay?
I think this is excellent. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Oops, I had a click.
Did I don't know how to make this to where somebody else gets to ask a question. So I *6 and I'm still talking to you. I don't know how to undo that. Well, I'll just opt out.
Okay.
Sharon, are you there?
Hi.
Okay, this is Jeanette from NorCal Dowsers. Is there anybody else who has any other questions? And if so, click on *6 to unmute yourself. Okay. And if not, yeah, feel free to pop in. But I just want to thank you, Ed, for being available and discussing the dowsing for potable and palatable water aquifers with contaminated aquifers at different depths in the same borehole in Buckeye. And I would be very interested also to look at what that Canadian rig looked like when it came down. And if there's any pictures of you and Jack dowsing in the middle of those tall plants, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I have some pictures. I really do.
Yes, that's sensational.
And I'm going to get your stuff together too on the brainwave stuff, because I've got these things that probably nobody else has right now. So I'll just throw the pictures in too. I'll go ahead and scan them myself and scan them in color, and then it'll just be as good as the originals.
Fantastic, and then we'll share that with over at our website, norcaldowsers.com.
Okay, sure.
Other people can see those.
Yeah. Okay. That would be fine. I put that down on the
I
list.
am at AST's website right now, and unfortunately, I don't see the 1997 and 1998 articles at this time. So maybe there's a lag between 04 and 1987. So maybe that will eventually pop up in the future. So
Okay.
don't be
Well,
alarmed if other people, if you don't find it just quite yet.
Okay, now mine is the winter 1997 and the spring 1998 are my two articles that we published in. But I have, copies made of these things. If somebody really wants them, I'm happy to get them to them.
Great. Do you want to give out your contact information?
How about my email is the best way to get a hold of me. It's very straightforward. It's ed@dowsered.com.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions, I just want to kind of go over what really touched me. I like how you mentioned the technical aspects, the total dissolved solids, TDSs, and the nitrate, the fluoride, chloride, arsenic, and I'm sure there's many other protocols to go over for our dowsing. And I like how you get yourself in a dowsing state with the prayer and implementing Raymond Grace's The Spirit of the Water. And what I find fascinating about your talk is that there were so many of you working on this project to bring millions of people who are going to be drinking that water.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it was after Jack and I decided, okay, let's go for this. Let's do what we need to do to learn what has to be done, and try to win the dowser part of this. And once we did, we really started to enjoy this. It was difficult work and a lot of things to worry about, but it helped. And we're only talking today about one corner of this, and we've got 4 other major places with 500 housing sites on them, and a need for more drilled areas. And of course, Valencia was now at that time, after we had done this much, Valencia was talking very amicably with Joe Kalish and Anderson. And so we were involved pretty heavily in that. I think we ended up close to the 15 well sites. I've forgotten now, but I know it was close to that. And they were difficult.
Well, you're the first person I know to accomplish so much, and thanks for making the dowsers look so good. And obviously it took a lot of work, and thanks for sharing your story. Is there anything else you would like, tidbits you'd like to give us dowsers?
I'm good at this point. If you can ask a question, I'll try to answer it, but I've given you the way I get ready and do things, and that's really all that's necessary for me to do what I need to do, whatever it is in my dowsing.
Well, thank you.
So, Ed, can I ask you a question here? This is Sherry again. What kind of advice would you give to a dowser who's doused a well site and they drill it, and then the driller tells them it's a dry hole? That could be very devastating to beginner dowsers.
Well, the first thing I would do is get my dowsing rod and stand over that well site and make sure that it is a dry hole. That you're not being lied to. I know that's kind of nasty, but I'd want to stand there and hey, if there's water in that well, and even if there's some water in the bottom of it, or if it's running freely, you will be able to catch it just in the same way you would if you were just starting to douse that well.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I do. If I'm told it's a dry hole by the driller, I go out there with the owner
Mm-hmm.
and I check, and one particular one was at the top of a hill in the, because I'm in the Oroville, Butte County area.
Yeah.
And this was probably about, like, say, 600 feet above Lake Oroville.
Oh.
And they had drilled down about 300 feet, and the driller told them that it was a dry hole. So I go out there. I mean, I didn't even have to look very far. The hole was 300 foot. There's only, like, the static level was at about 2 foot below the surface of the land.
Oh, wow. Could you get into the well? Could you get into the well and drop something down and see if it splashed?
It was actually uncapped. We could look in the hole and see the water there about 2 foot below us.
Oh, that's ridiculous. You were being scammed, literally. I don't know why he was doing that. I mean, he was not getting his money if he gave, well, he wanted to be paid for the dry hole, of course. I guess that's part of the deal, you know.
Yeah, he wanted to drill another well. He said, well, I don't think it's enough water. That's what he said.
Oh,
but,
that's different.
Well, not the owner. The driller said that when he drilled it. He said it's dry because I don't think there's enough water for the guy's use. However, I suggested to the owner to go ahead and put a pump in it and go ahead and use that. And it's funny because the owner actually wanted another well site because it was such a big parcel. He wanted 2 different houses on 2 different areas.
Okay.
And so I went ahead and dowsed another area for him, and so he had 2 nice wells.
Yeah. And there's no reason why, if he could get electricity over to the well, to go ahead and put a pump in it.
Exactly. So, and I had another one.
It costs money, but, and, you know, getting the power over to it, but it just sounded fishy the way the guy responded. I guess he wanted another well to be bought from him, or another well site to give him another job. Is that what you think happened? That he wanted another job right there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we had another one where it was the same thing. He told the owner it was a dry hole, and so I go out to the property with the owner, and I drop a rock down the center.
Yeah, that's what I would have done.
And I counted, you know, how many seconds it was until it hit something. Well, it actually hit the side of the well, and it was like ricocheting back and forth all the way down. And when we shined the light down there, it was crooked.
Oh.
And so I doused exactly where the drill bit ended up, and it was about 6 feet away from the actual hole on the top. So the drill bit had drifted off. And when you do that and you've got veins that are only maybe 6 inches to 12 inches wide, they're going to miss it when they go, you know, at an angle. So I actually put my ear to the hole, and I could hear water. I could hear like a waterfall.
Yeah,
so I
would have done that too. I'd have got down on my hands and knees and laid down there and stuck my ear. I did that with the very first well I ever doused and drilled.
Exactly.
I was laying there listening to it.
So I had the owner come over, and I said, I want you to listen, put your ear down to the hole, and do you hear anything? And he says, yeah, it sounds like a waterfall. I go, that's right. I said, you have water in this hole. I said, I'll go ahead and I'll divert some more water into it. So I did that.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 cases there where I was you know, we were told that it was dry and there actually was water.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes the water can come in after the driller has left the property.
That's true. But
So,
that isn't
yeah,
that isn't very often.
right.
So tell me again, did he let the bit run off at an angle? Is that what he did? He didn't drill.
Driller drills pretty straight, but at this time he must have hit some sort of a crevasse or something that drifted it off at an angle. And he says sometimes that he had been drilling for like 35, 40 years. Sometimes when the drill bit goes off at an angle like that, it can, he says sometimes it'll go off as much as 30 feet from the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time what I do when I'm out at a site is I ask where the driller needs to start the drill bit in order to drill a hole into the actual aquifer.
Yes. Yeah. Because that aquifer, he could miss it by 2 feet, you know. He could go right by it, and maybe some water will come over from the aquifer itself, but he's not drilled into it. He's missed it, and he's drilling with dirt, nothing but dirt. That's another way to look at it, too. He can be at an angle.
Okay, I guess we've run out of time here.
Yeah.
This talk will be on in about 4 weeks, so that will be the 3rd Monday of May. Goodness sakes, the time is going too fast. All right, so any more questions before we sign off?
Nope. I'm happy, and if everybody else is happy, I'm happier. Happiest.
Okay. Any more comments?
Just a little plug. I just want to thank you, Sharon and Ed, for starting this Watermaster water conference, because it will help. It's helping us, and it's helping those for the future. Thanks for giving of your time of service freely, and we really appreciate both of you. I'm glad, Ed, you got to be our guest speaker. Maybe one day, Sherry, you'll be our guest speaker. And our plug for our plug is that both of you are award winners from, you both have won a number of awards from ASD for your contributions and being very successful dowsers and helping with the education. So thank you both very, very much. ASD has nominations coming up, so May 15th is the last day, so they're asking for a call for nominations for 2018 for Volunteer of the Year, Dowser of the Year, a Register of Recognition Outstanding Service Award, Legend Award, Paul 7G Award, Outstanding Chapter Leader, Best Website, Best Chapter Newsletter.
Oh my goodness.
And those awards will be presented at the ASD's 2019 conference, and that will be June 26th through June 30th. And you can get your member price, or if you aren't a member, you just pay an extra $70. And if you want to bring a friend, save $200. Or that's in 2019 National Dowsing Convention and Metaphysical Expo and Annual Members Meeting, Plymouth State University, Plymouth, New Hampshire. The universe can be at your fingertips. Learn to develop the abilities that will find your truth. We can teach you. Keynote speaker is Brian Vesco. This gathering features fantastic workshops, lectures, wellness practitioners, vendors, and formal training to develop your inner knowing using dowsing techniques. And both of you have taught at the ASD conferences before, so hopefully for newbies, this would be a nice time. And if you aren't new, it's always good to meet new friends and see familiar faces. So thank you again, Sherry and Ed, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone again May 20th at our next Mastermind conference call. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye now.
Hey, Sherry.
Yes.
Sherry, it's Jack from Mile High Dowsers.
Oh, hi, Jack.
Are you going to be able to make it out to Denver?
I'm still working on that to see if I can come to your next meeting or not.
Okay.
It all has to do with like transportation and a room and everything. But and if I can't, we might be able to arrange something to help with the project of I think there's a 40-acre parcel that they're going to be working with as a project. And I can work with the map dowsing on that and anything you guys need to do. So, I mean, I'll be there in Colorado, but the date I had to come there was the 8th. And I may not be able to make arrangements ahead of time, but I can work with you guys. I mean, if you want to do a project while I'm there, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well,
I tried calling you, by the way.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh.
So give me a call. Because we're done with the conference call here, and so let's see. I'm stopping there.
I'll send you an email tomorrow. I'll send you an email tomorrow, Sherry.
All righty.